This is the F101B Voodoo Jet Long-Range Interceptor, the newest and most potent weapon system in the operational squadrons which will defend the North American continent.
In the wake of World War II, the race for aerial supremacy didn't slow down. The United States Air Force charged headfirst into the jet age, commissioning a series of high-performance fighters that would come to define a generation of aviation. The legendary Century Series. Last time, we explored the F-100 Super Sabre, the first US fighter to break the sound barrier in level flight. But that was just the beginning. Now we turn to the aircraft that came next, a machine born from nuclear strategy, Cold War paranoia, and raw speed. This is the McDonnell F101 Voodoo, a supersonic interceptor, a nuclear bomber, a recon jet, and a complex, versatile, and often overlooked aircraft that bridged the gap between eras. Overshadowed by its famous successor, the Phantom, and too late to truly shine as an escort fighter, the Voodoo carved out a legacy of its own, one forged in NATO standoffs, Cuban skies, and dangerous low-level recon runs over Vietnam. It was fast, it was bold, and it was built for a kind of war the world hoped would never come. This is the story of the F-101 Voodoo, the Cold War's supersonic ghost, in Chapter 2 in our series on the iconic Century Series fighters. To understand the F-101 Voodoo, you have to rewind to the dawn of the Cold War, when American air power doctrine was still reeling from the lessons of World War II and bracing for the nuclear future. In the late 1940s, the US Air Force needed a jet that could escort nuclear-capable bombers like the B-36 Peacemaker deep into Soviet territory. The belief was that strategic bombers, no matter how fast or high-flying, would need a dedicated fighter to protect them from swarms of enemy interceptors. McDonnell Aircraft Company, relatively new to the big leagues of military aviation, responded with what would eventually become the XF-88, a sleek, long-range jet fighter with straight wings and twin engines. But the XF-88 came too late for its original purpose and was shelved after initial trials. Then the Korean War broke out. Jet technology surged forward, and the Air Force realized it still had no true long-range escort fighter in its arsenal. So in 1951, McDonnell dusted off the XF-88 design and gave it a radical makeover. What emerged was a bigger, faster, swept-wing machine with supersonic potential, the F-101. From the beginning, the Voodoo was a product of shifting priorities. What started as a bomber escort became a high-speed tactical strike aircraft, then an interceptor, then a reconnaissance platform. The jet was constantly reimagined to fit the changing needs of the Air Force, and that flexibility became one of its defining traits. The first prototype, dubbed the XF-101A, took to the skies in September 1954. By late 1956, production models were entering service, though the original escort mission had already faded by then. Thanks to evolving nuclear strategy and advances in surface-to-air missiles, the Air Force wasn't about to waste a Mach 1.7 capable aircraft. Instead, they pivoted the Voodoo toward a new mission, including nuclear strike and high-speed photo reconnaissance. The F-101 had speed, range, and looks, and though it was never perfect in any one role, its raw performance gave it staying power in an era of rapid technological turnover. The McDonnell F-101 Voodoo was unlike anything that came before it. At the heart of the Voodoo's performance were its twin Pratt & Whitney J57 turbojet engines. These massive afterburning power plants allowed the F-101 to scream past a Mach 1 at a speed when supersonic flight was still a major technical milestone. In level flight, it could reach speeds in excess of 1,000 miles an hour, faster than any other operational aircraft in the US inventory when it debuted. The airframe was long and lean, with sharply swept wings and a distinctive nose that gave the aircraft an unmistakable profile. With a length of over 67 feet and a wingspan just under 40 feet, the Voodoo was a big aircraft, especially for a fighter, yet still nimble enough to dogfight in the right conditions. But speed was its defining trait. The F101B interceptor variant could intercept and engage Soviet bombers at high altitude with blistering speed, while the reconnaissance RF-101 version was so fast that it often outran enemy defenses during low-level photo runs, especially over hostile territory like Cuba and North Vietnam. Armament varied by model. The original F101A carried 4 20mm cannons and was capable of delivering tactical nuclear weapons. Later interceptor variants ditched guns entirely in favor of guided missiles, all directed by advanced radar fire control systems for the time. Its cockpit was loaded with analog dials and Cold War era avionics, but to pilots of the day, the Voodoo felt like stepping into the future. Its bubble canopy offered good visibility, and it featured early versions of systems that would become standard on later fighters. Despite its sheer power, the Voodoo had its quirks. The aircraft's long fuselage and powerful engines could make it tricky to handle, especially at low speeds or during tight turns. One particular issue was the aircraft's dangerous tendency towards severe pitch-up when flown at a high angle of attack. This would never be rectified. However, the USAF was satisfied with the installation of an active inhibitor system to deter such instances. Pilots needed a steady hand, but in the right hands, the F101 was a rocket. Now let's break down the different variants of the Voodoo. The original production version was the F101A, a long-range fighter bomber built to deliver a tactical nuke deep into enemy territory. It was fast and armed with the internal cannons, and capable of solo strike missions. About 77 were built. Next was the F101C, an improved strike version with a reinforced airframe and upgraded avionics. It could carry heavier payloads and handle more aggressive maneuvers. Only 47 were produced, but they offered structural durability for low-level operations. The most numerous model was the F101B, a 2-seat all-weather interceptor built for Air Defense Command. Over 479 were built, armed with guided missiles like the nuclear-tipped Air-2 Genie and A-4 Falcon missiles, and equipped with radar and automatic fire control. It was designed to take down Soviet bombers. The F101B saw extensive service into the 1970s and also formed the backbone of Canada's interceptor force as the CF-101. The TF-101B was a dual control trainer variant based on the F-101B. These were used to transition pilots into operational units. About 79 were converted. The RF models were unarmed recon jets that replaced weapons with cameras. The RF-101A was the first to enter service, followed by the improved RF-101C with enhanced range and systems. The G and H variants were conversions of former F-101A and C models, repurposed for reconnaissance. They served in a variety of high-stakes missions, including deep penetration recon over Southeast Asia and Cuba. The F-101 Voodoo's career began in 1957, when the F-101A entered service with Tactical Air Command. Its original purpose was to, as mentioned before, deliver tactical nuclear weapons. But its mission quickly lost prominence as missile technology and strategic doctrine evolved. Not long after, the RF-101A took on a new role, as a reconnaissance platform. Introduced in the late 1950s, it was the first US supersonic recon platform and quickly proved its value. In 1962, it was the RF-101 that captured images of Soviet missile installations in Cuba, providing the photographic proof that helped avert nuclear war during the Cuban Missile Crisis. As tensions with the Soviet Union remained high, the F-101B interceptor became a critical part of continental defense. Deployed in 1959, it patrolled the skies of North America under the command of Air Defense Command, and later NORAD. Equipped with radar-guided missiles and nuclear-tipped Air-2 Genie, it stood ready to counter Soviet bomber incursions through the 1960s. Meanwhile, in Southeast Asia, the RF-101C was flying dangerous recon missions over Vietnam. These began in the early 1960s and escalated as the war intensified. Voodoo pilots flew at treetop level, dodging flak and SAM to photograph enemy movements and bombing results. Their intelligence was vital, and the risks they faced immense. By the late 1960s, more advanced aircraft like the RF-4C Phantom began to replace the Voodoo in frontline service. Still, the F101B continued its watch over North America into the early 70s, and the RF-101C remained in use through much of Vietnam. The US began retiring its Voodoos in the mid-1970s. The last RF-101s left service shortly after and by the end of the decade. They were largely gone from American skies, but the story didn't end there. Canada operated the CF-101 variant until 1984, nearly 3 decades of service. For a jet that was originally designed to escort bombers in the 1950s, that's a legacy of impressive longevity. The F-101 Voodoo wasn't the most famous aircraft of its era. It didn't capture headlines like some of its Century Series peers, and it wasn't without its flaws, but it served, and it did so in roles few aircraft could have handled as effectively. Born from the XF-88 escort fighter, the Voodoo quickly outgrew its original purpose. As nuclear strategy shifted and Cold War tensions escalated, the aircraft adapted, becoming a nuclear strike platform, a frontline interceptor, and one of the most important reconnaissance assets of its time. It flew high above the Arctic and low over Southeast Asia. It photographed Soviet missile sites in Cuba, often flying alone and unarmed into hostile airspace. And while newer designs eventually replaced it, the Voodoo quietly helped shape the future of air reconnaissance and defense. Like many Cold War aircraft, its story is one of compromise, adaptation, and quiet effectiveness. It wasn't built to be iconic, but over time, it earned its place. The F-101 Voodoo may not have stolen the spotlight, but it left behind a legacy that's hard to ignore. And there you have it, the F-101 Voodoo. Thank you so much for sticking to the end, and stay tuned because there are more videos to come. Anyways, as always, thank you for watching.